Order. Question number 6, the Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. Does he agree with the Prime Minister that New Zealand's monetary policy is best practice?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, yes. Not that that means necessarily the Reserve Bank has made, on retrospect, the ideal decision in every case, but that view that New Zealand's monetary policy framework is best practice was confirmed by, I think, 5 different reviews under the previous government, as well as our own.
The Honourable David Parker.
What changes to monetary policy and Reserve Bank powers is he proposing?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, we are not proposing significant changes because we don't believe that such are required. What has happened is that what's now called macro-prudential policy has become an important part of the mix of tools available for determining monetary conditions. And the Reserve Bank, New Zealand Reserve Bank, has been something of a world leader in the transparency of its macro-prudential approach.
The Honourable David Parker.
Has the Minister seen yesterday's report by Fran O'Sullivan, which said a bizarre alternative reality has emerged, which has resulted in Mr English saying New Zealand is a safe haven and New Zealand exporters do not need to see the currency get so out of whack with the underlying reality that this is no longer a safe haven for exporters to operate from?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I think the bizarre alternative reality is what we saw happen in Washington over the last couple of weeks, what we see happening in Europe, where both of those countries following policies that are devaluing their currencies quite considerably. Of course, a high dollar is difficult for our exporters. We would much prefer the dollar to be lower. But there is no obvious monetary policy tool that could achieve that.
David Bennett. No, David, apologise, member, I called David Bennett.
Supplementary question to the Minister of Finance. What reviews of monetary policy have been conducted over the past decade? What did they conclude and what changes occurred as a result?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, there have been a number of reviews of monetary policy. The first was in 2000 by Professor Lars Svensson, who found that our monetary policy is entirely consistent with best international practice. The most recent review was undertaken by the Finance and Expenditure Committee in 2008 under Charles Chauvel, which found that New Zealand's monetary policy approach is standard among small, open, developed economies and is regarded by our advisers as world best practice. In fact, no changes have been made as a result of 4 or 5 reviews over the last 10 years, and that's because there's no obvious changes that can be made.
The Honourable David Parker.
Has the Minister also seen reports from exporters like Raycon recently and industry bodies like the New Zealand Exporters and Manufacturers calling for substantial changes to monetary policy? And is his government's inaction in the face of those calls why Fran O'Sullivan says, and I quote, "Key is playing the old Pontius Pilate line saying there is nothing the central bank can do to lower the dollar"?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, not only have I seen those reports, I've discussed this matter with any number of exporters, and actually when they are asked just what changes they actually want to the monetary policy regime, I've found that the various propositions amount to small wording changes, which anyone who knows about monetary policy would say don't make much difference to the practical conduct of monetary policy. We would prefer a lower exchange rate. The world's not delivering that to us, so we have to get on with being a very competitive economy so that our exporters can do business profitably.
The Honourable David Parker.
Is the Minister concerned or embarrassed that in the same article Fran O'Sullivan says, but the Prime Minister's memory is faulty? 4 years ago, Key was singing a different tune when he bailed me up at an Australian power brokers conference in Sydney. Back then, Key, at the time national leader, argued New Zealand economy couldn't sustain exchange rates of 74 cents US dollar.
The Honourable Bill English.
No, Mr Speaker, not at all. The fact is that the exchange rate has reached levels I don't think any of us anticipated, and that simply shows the size of the challenge this economy has in becoming competitive enough to be able to create jobs and incomes. The alternative of more government spending, higher taxes and more debt is a recipe for a much worse outlook for exporters, not a better one.
Question number 7, the Honourable Heather Roy.
Thank you,
Order.
Mr Speaker.
I've called Heather